Exactly, exactly. It's already on. Yes. Good. Yes. Unfortunately, it is the case that we learn most through life crises. Unfortunately, that happened to me too. And after a 4-year crisis, I ended up with Sabine Bobert. I ended up with her system, and that's why I'm sitting here today. And would like to tell you a little about it because I think it can help one or the other not to sink into the crisis, but perhaps to create new courage. Well, I'm Gabi. I live in the Bergische Land and was on the threshold between my fortunately very successful farm life and retirement, and then a 4-year period began that brought me to the edge of my self-image. My entire period of crisis culminates like a magnifying glass in my horse. I bought the horse to fulfill a youth dream at the beginning of my retirement, namely to learn the art of horsemanship. I have been riding for many years. This was also my second horse, but the fine art of horsemanship, you could compare it to dance, to harmony between two beings from two worlds. That had stuck as a dream, and then I fell. I fell from this very horse, from this dream. And for me, that was a coincidence of such extreme contradictions that I lost trust in life and the world and everything, that this horse basically threw the wheelchair at my door. I had a serious bicycle accident and am also limited with my arm, 15 or 16 screws between my elbow and wrist. Then I had a fall, then I had a scratch injury, then I had another fall and broke several vertebrae. And my back is pretty bad today. Yes, actually a disaster. But ultimately, it's a miracle because I can still do everything I wanted with this back. And in retrospect, I have to say, the horse, it's such a lovely animal. It reflected me. It reflected my destructiveness. It expressed my self-destruction, my lack of love for myself. I didn't love the horse either. I didn't love anyone. I didn't love myself. It just had to work, and somehow I was always looking for something rooted, and I couldn't find it. It was already clear to me back then, even though I was just at the very beginning of the journey, that I didn't actually have to exchange horses. I had to exchange ideas. I have to change. That was another sentence that came to me as an experimental model. And today, I can say that it is true. I was the problem and not the horse, because we have now been together for 3 years without any accidents. And it's a huge pleasure to go to the stable almost every day, a huge pleasure to work with the horse, and we have developed a very close relationship with each other that I would never have thought before that something like this was possible, and that touches me every time when I'm there, also deep in my soul. So I was in the forest with my girlfriend for the first time after this accident. I just cried for half an hour because suddenly it works again. And then I said, what if twice a week I walk through the forest with this horse for half an hour at a walk? Then I'll be the happiest person in the world. And today, we're going on courses. I sit in the front, my horse is in the back of the trailer, and we have a nice workout. And we have trainers at our stable, and they come and teach us how to work freely with the horses, how we can have fun with the horses, and how we can also work on lessons that are very strenuous, side passages, traversals. Now I want to work on the Piaffe this year. If not this year, then it will definitely happen next year. But that's actually the end of my story. So I was sitting here at home and didn't dare go down the stairs anymore because I was afraid I'd get down there with a broken neck and fall again. I didn't trust myself to do anything anymore because this series had really shaken me to my core. This series of accidents had shaken me to my core to such an extent that I didn't trust anyone. I didn't trust anyone. I didn't trust anything anymore. And of course, I had the feeling that now is my life over because I wanted to practice horse riding in my retirement. I wanted to jog. I wanted to ride a bike, and that all seemed to be over. So life was over for me. When I reached my lowest point, I had recently taken a seminar with Sabine Bobert and had the feeling that this was something that could help me out of this hellhole. Meditation was something pretty scary for me. So I couldn't sit still for more than 5 minutes, and then suddenly I was asked to sit still for 20 minutes. But when things get that bad, you do anything. You can grab the anchor yourself if it is covered with spikes. Yes, I traveled from one seminar to the next because I was in such need. And over time, I realized what I was actually missing, namely the rooting in some, as Williges Jaeger says, foundation, the support in a larger whole that the church, I was raised as a staunch Catholic, had never been able to give me. That also has a bit of a biographical background, but the rooting of trust in life in some meaning, I would now also say in a divine origin, that was missing in my life and had left a big emptiness in me, and I have that very well over the decades through commitment and work, commitment and social. There's a lot of activism going on here, but being quiet with me was a threat. And since the need was so great, the need and the solution suddenly came together. And I was able to work very well on this meditation system with mantra, will exercises, and emotional exercises, especially since, and that's what I like about the system, firstly, 3 areas are addressed. Secondly, body, mind, and soul. Thirdly, it is a system for us humans, 21st century. We don't have to go to the cave and meditate for weeks. We can do it in the car, at the tram stop while ironing and doing the dishes. I love this practical life, and it really suited me. And since, I have to repeat it again, I had no other choice and no choice, I stuck to it very consistently and very disciplinedly. Of course, I kept reaching my own limits. Then another black cellar hole opened up, and I had to take a look. What I like about the MTP system is that it is divided into 3 parts, which I see in several parts, that is the mantra, the emotional exercise, and the will exercise. It speaks to the body, mind, and soul, and for me, it is also divided into 3 parts. It includes psychology, neurology, and spirituality. This is what makes the system so comprehensive. And what I really like about growing up in a staunch Catholic family is that I can find out that as early as the 4th century AD, there were desert monks who developed meditation techniques that were simply brilliant. I've never had that before. I'd never heard of it before. By the way, I would now like to introduce 2 terms that, for me, belong to it, namely purification, cleaning. It is the path, a path of purification, to reach healing, self-healing through purification. And what really fascinates me are these 2 words, habitare secum, live with yourself. And just a few weeks ago, I've been here for 3 years now, just a few weeks ago, I had the hint of a realization when I practiced this habitare secum, which I haven't gotten to yet. If you live with me, nothing can happen to me anymore. Then crises and suffering and difficult situations become in completely different places. Because by being with me, living in me, I am untouchable. I particularly like that too. I am particularly impressed, and I particularly like the fact that I have been given and can now use a whole toolbox of options that can change my life, resolve critical situations quickly, and make my panic attacks, when they do come back, much better succeed in overcoming them. And of course, this craft kit also included some seminars such as mental healing or mystical abilities. And for me, that now includes applying a lot of things that I have learned over time. So for example, I also meditate. I don't just meditate in the car, and not just at the supermarket checkout. When I sit in the morning, for example, in the initial period after my vertebral fractures, I activated my self-healing powers very strongly and then created a connection to the force field of Jesus Christ and tried to strengthen and activate my healing powers. Of course, a back like that will eventually get better. But today, I have the feeling that the vertebrae are still crooked and crooked, but my back as a whole is so stable and so strong, as if the vertebrae were no longer there crooked. And that's where the topic of self-healing as an experience comes to the fore for me. So this isn't just babble and pure theory, but I'm convinced that I was able to influence this through these strong thoughts. I have to say that I do my gymnastics regularly and have great therapists, but that was also an important factor. And I would like to get to it now because I always got a huge list of books from the seminars, and 3 books particularly fascinated me. And on the subject of what I just said, I just want to mention Bruce Lipton. Bruce Lipton is a professor of cell biology, did research in stem cell research at a famous U.S. university, I've forgotten the name, and then got into spirituality through science. And it combines these 2 things, which I can now combine very well as a natural science student. And he writes, for example, in his book, Intelligent Cells Positive Thoughts. These are also healing thoughts for me. Positive thoughts have a powerful effect on behavior and genes, but only if they match the respective subconscious programming. And negative thoughts are just as powerful. If we understand how these positive and negative beliefs control our life processes, we can use this knowledge to create a life filled with health and joy. And I have to say, I experienced this firsthand. I managed to practice this. And even though there are always setbacks in principle, I was sitting down in the basement and am now living exactly the life I had always hoped for, and my physical limitations don't actually play a role. But I don't focus on that either. I'm not saying I can't do it, I'm saying what I can do and what I enjoy. And then I'm grateful every day when I get up and I'm not in pain, and grateful every night when I go to bed pain-free. and I managed to do that 90% of my days. Very important in books was Dr. Herbert Venson, a cardiologist from USA, Healing Through Faith. And there is the wonderful evidence underneath. And well, that's American, right? This has to go directly to the title, Self-Healing in the New Medicine. He did research on the subject of self-healing, and I was able to use this book to encourage myself to follow this path through experience to see if it all works. Can I transform myself from victim to director, but my own life? The intermediate step is also in the text for Sabine Boebert. The intermediate step is introspection, which has a very short meaning for me, because introspection makes us take a look at our demons, go into the basement when they come up. They don't always have to be easy. But introspection leads me to say, where do I still have my black corners, my deficits? Why did I react the way I did? Why did it become so destructive again? And then to transform myself using the 3 exercises? Yes, I also say to program, to reprogram myself for a new constructive interaction with myself and with my fellow human beings. This has nothing to do with manipulation. It's just the dismantling of the old patterns that have been stamped into us, which have nothing to do with us, but rather our environment has shaped us from childhood. This is manipulation. And for me, the path goes through introspection, out through introspection, into development. As the saying goes, to the commodity itself, or to the fully conscious human being. There are wonderful terms in all directions, all religions, and they all actually mean the same thing. I found the second subject, that is, intelligent cells, fascinating. You have to have a bit of scientific interest. Some chapters are a bit difficult to read. Second was quantum physics. A mind divider who is a doctor and has a dialogue with a quantum physicist, and where the two come to a common denominator on the subject of mind divide. Heisenberg, the great quantum physicist, I love a quote from him. If you fill the cup of science, you become an atheist. If you empty it to the end, you will find God at the bottom. If someone says something like that, I can believe them because they were a well-known green scientist. We just have to learn the cup to the end. And that is ultimately our task in self-observation, so that we can develop into what we are meant for, what we are intended for. And from this source, I have found that the gratitude, the joy, the wit, the humor, the new people around me, the conversations that have become completely different than before, and yes, it rains and the sun shines. Do I fixate on the rain, or do I fixate on the sun? What does fixing mean? So I concentrate on that. I'm not complaining about the rain. I'm happy to write about the sun. That's my decision, and in the book, now I'm coming to the last one, so there are many others, but this is also a really great book. Sharon Bagley, New Thoughts, New Brain, almost summing up what science is in the past, and today says about neuroplasticity. This means that there is very modern neurological research that was made possible by MRI and brain scans, and there is a group of U.S. scientists who have been working with the Dalai Lama for many years and who then had brain scans through the Dalai Lama of monks who had been meditating for 40 years, and then found that the monks' brains were tuned to frequencies is active, which until now, we or neuroscience did not think that it was even possible for hearing to be active in such a frequency range. So I developed a picture from the contents of this book about neuroplasticity, which is of course also presented here as scientific research. If you're constantly worried, very constantly, thinking negatively, I'm not good enough, look how people look. Of course, you will only meet people who look at you strangely and confirm you. Then, there is an enrichment of neuronal cells in the worry area in the brain. There is an area of the brain that is specifically responsible for such functions. And then a neural highway develops. And the moment something is triggered, the worries flow smoothly and easily from our brain straight into the body with negative messengers. And we feel confirmed once again that life is difficult and worrying. The happy, optimistic, confident thoughts are then marginal phenomena. And in the brain, it appears like a jungle path, a trail that has become overgrown. And then, not much happens. Now we have the chance, and this is the point of taking control of my life. I decide which thoughts I nurture and which thoughts I push aside for a bit. That works again, I think. The key is, if I understand it, introspection. And then I decide which impulses should be made in my brain from the beaten path to the wide country road, namely those of joy, hopefully. And if I pay less attention to the worry highway, hopefully it will eventually become overgrown. As I said, This is a layman's picture, which is confirmed by scientific findings. What is even more important for me, it is my life experience. Because after 4 years of crisis and accidents and illnesses, I no longer fell. I no longer had any illnesses. I was neither in the hospital nor in bed for any length of time. My immune system has collapsed during the flu epidemic, and my horse has still thrown me off. I started loving myself. I started to love my horse. Suddenly, my husband was good enough too. In the past, everything wasn't good enough. Everything had to be perfect. Today, I tell myself, we are all just human, and we accept the quirky and the weak ones with mildness. Of course, that doesn't always work, but I'm on the way. And this jungle path that was no longer visible, this smile, the smile because of my weaknesses, my strange behavior, and those of those around me. The trail has already become a pretty wide street, and I like to walk up and down there now. This is a very important essence for me in my life, and I notice that every day I can say it works. We just have to get going.